In numerous popular stories that we come across the concepts of extreme loss, fear, and William is a prime illustration of attachment. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet tale. In this storyline, two young lovers competing families become embroiled in forbidden love, loss apprehension, and the strong bond they have with one another cause them to make terrible choices resulting in their untimely demise. The overwhelming fear of losing a family member and overindulgence in affection leads to terrible outcomes when examining this narrative from the Stoic point of view, philosophy from which we can draw useful teachings. Stoicism imparts the value of realizing and embracing what is outside of our control, such as the demise of family members. Have Romeo and Juliet adopted the Stoic philosophy in their worldview, maybe they would have discovered that, even with their deep love, recognizing the potential for separation and emphasizing the importance of every moment combined could have been a better idea. Approach the school of Stoic philosophy, a way of thinking that prioritizes resiliency and self-control, presents a distinct viewpoint on interpersonal interactions, in particular about attachment and loss, as per to this ideology that fosters strong linkages to outside variables that are outside of our purview, like connections with other people, can serve as a clear path to epicus of discontent. Is among the most well-known Stoics contended that hoping to our loved one's eternity is in practice of desiring what is not desired as a desire to be in charge of the unpredictable, but it is undeniable that suffering emerges when we experience someone's death. Intimate sorrow with its overpowering intensity is frequently a sign of love and devotion. Stoic theory does not discount these feelings, but implies that a large number of our responses to sadness may arise from an unreasonable perspective on death and life in this situation. We address loss and attachment from the critical viewpoint, examining how the being apart from our loved ones has an impact. We bind our lives to people in a variety of approaches that range from straightforward love to an obsession that may be detrimental, wish to keep someone else steady, both the fear of and its existence in our life. Their absence is a frequent occurrence. However, they cast doubt on our comprehension of the human relationship's nature and our methods for control. The feeling of losing and breaking this story apart gets us to a thoughtful analysis of the intricacy of human relationships, and the Stoics propose to accept the unavoidable loss and division in a widely accepted language, approachable yet profound and introspective. We aim to pique attention and spark curiosity about an extensive age range of 14 to 50 years old. Ancient extended an invitation to everyone to an contemplative and illuminating voyage regarding love lost and the knowledge of addressing the depth of feeling in both a strong bond with its implications and outcomes is a subject that strikes a chord in different stories, both fictional and historical. Frequently, the severity of this attachment intensifies feelings of issues because it exposes our happiness to the caprice of. The Stoic concept of fate illuminates this matter, emphasizes how attachment to factors that are beyond our control, whether things or individuals, can expose us to the whims of chance and fortune. Fortune is the embodiment of good fortune, and the highs and lows are then determined by fate. Of our life shifting between times of happiness and sadness, a noteworthy instance of this dynamic is represented in Anakin's saga fiction's most famous character, Skywalker. On his voyage, Anakin betrays the Jedi Order and becomes motivated by the dark side by a frantic attempt to keep Padme in the Stoic perspective, analyzes his life. Anakin is a person who has lost his freedom to unbridled wants as an alternative of being led by logic. He is engrossed by erratic feelings such as fear and wrath and envy, thereby turning into a prisoner of destiny and a puppet controlled by situations that this illustration emphasizes. How passionate and irrational a bond can result in a destructive path for oneself and a loss of individual autonomy. Stoic philosophy proposes that in place of "we are controlled by these attachments," should foster reason and tranquility, acknowledging that some parts of life are outside of our power. Thus, by doing this, we can obtain a degree of personal autonomy and emotional fortitude that enables us to confront fate's whims in a balanced, and at the center of this conversation is wisdom, is the idea that our attempts to maintain those who hold a special place in our hearts. Life may be a selfish strive. This viewpoint implies that many times we want other people's companionship, but from selflessness or for the group excellent, yet to satiate a particular want, a want to be true to our values. In this procedure is directed by our interests. We run the danger of choosing poorly by concentrating only on satisfying our epicus wants. Observe with his trademark clarity how readily we foster negativity sentiments like wrath and hatred against anything that appears to be in opposition to. This propensity is our interest demonstrated in the course of what inspired Anakin Skywalker to do what he did by self-centered desires, which lead to the demise in the epic Titus's reflection of devastation, additionally emphasizes how human nature has the natural tendency to set priorities, self-interest prioritizing it over everything, including the nation of the family and even divine presence. When we recognize that for instance, gods may meddle in our interests that we might pursue to the nth degree, disparaging them or obliterating their temples are this is credited to Alexander the Great. The Stoic viewpoint highlights the significance of comprehending and controlling our attachments in search of a harmony between affection and reason. The notion that, as an alternative to losing someone to whom we are truly returning them, is a means of acknowledging that, in the end, we don't own anyone. This idea can be seen in Alexander's response to a loved one's passing that caused him to demolish temples, illustrating how strong attachments can result in stoic, severe actions. Philosophy asks us to consider the character of our bonds and the significance of addressing them in a well-rounded viewpoint, incorporating feeling additionally. Because of this, we can accomplish a calm and wise state of dealing healthier in light of the unavoidable romantic love, losses and transformations in life, and other forms of strong bonding with things outside of our control are frequently viewed from a Stoic perspective, philosophy as possible forerunners of calamities. This perspective is founded on the seeing that these attachments throughout human history, the root of disputes, aggression, and even kills the intended feelings that complement passionate love and other comparable attachments, may not always effectively handled, resulting in excessive and detrimental responses to losses, regardless of a friend's passing. The conclusion of a love connection or being turned down by a children frequently feel that possessing a ripped item of personal worth from this response makes sense to them. Considering the depth and intricacy of human. Regardless of Stoic philosophy, relationships gives a distinct stance on these in light of its events. We are not defeated. Folks to whom we are merely returning them the cosmos, which we never really owned. This viewpoint implies that we ought to view relationships as transient and outside of our full control. Regulate this somber perspective is not an invitation to complete separation or emotional detachment, instead of a request to comprehension and acknowledgement that life's inherent nature is transient, and by acknowledging that people are unpredictable, relationships are not anything we own, can accept a type of love and attachment devoid of being overly attached and impractical expectations, rather than obsessing over the notion of loss, which this viewpoint promotes us to cherish the moments and encounters, mutual acceptance of alterations and separations, as organic components of life, adopting. This Stoic perspective can aid in reducing the strength of our feelings' responses to losses that enable us to deal with them in a more tranquil and in balance. In doing so, We provide access to a greater comprehension of the fact that while we not be able to manage every part of our lives, we have a choice in how we react to them. If you're having fun, so don't pass it up. The chance to buy the ebook right now. Ancient Stoicism in the 21st Century, Tactics for Today's Issues, and unlock your wealth and prosperity and strengthen your connections with this ebook. URL in the epic pinned comment in his Profound Thinking, the status displayed in his fourth book. Discourses tackle a major problem of Stoic philosophy and the connection to outside variables, such as family members, such as marriages, families, or children. He claims that certain components are beyond. This notion is not really within our control. Draws attention to the transient character of most items we cherish that could disappear at any. In the epic's historical era, slavery was a socially acceptable individuals, and reality were genuinely possessed as assets, even though slavery is not practiced today. Widely disapproved and denounced, there are remaining evidence of this ownership attitude toward the individuals in our lives. Frequently, we count on friends and family to give staff members time and attention to meet their responsibilities on time and spouses to behave in line with our prefers this assumption, albeit with a greater delicate and more widely accepted than slavery still exhibits some degree of stoic demand and attachment. Philosophy helps us to understand and acknowledge that we don't have complete authority over others. This comprehension is thought to be necessary for attaining emotional equilibrium and reason in daily existence by freeing ourselves from these bonds and expectations. We open the door to more inner tranquility and an improved capacity for accept changes and losses that are inevitable. Stoic instruction recommends that, in place of holding on to irrational notions and a delusion of dominance over other people, we should foster tolerance and realizing that every individual their independence and liberty. This change of viewpoint not only sets us free from the annoyances and disappointments frequently connected to unexpected, but also enables us to more sincere admiration for our relationships, which we value for what they are not, for our desired outcome for them to be the idea that the individuals we cherish and love are an extension of who we are and the fact that they form an integral part of our lives in some way. Is a typical sentiment. However, beneath the viewpoint of Stoic thought, this conception is seen as a basic error. Epicus is among the most prominent Stoic philosophers contend that factors outside of our own other people's essences are never, if we owned it, it would be ours. Over others, as Epicus implies, they would consistently act by our hopes and desires would never depart from us and be out of our reach. Of being affected or absorbed by others, but reality demonstrates that people behave as per their desires and situations frequently in ways that don't meet our needs or expectations. Consequently, the idea that we have some type of ownership or total command, Stoic perspective, dominance over other beings, an illusion that cannot coexist with reality. The nature of things from this Stoic standpoint asks us to consider the nature of our connections and reevaluate our attitude toward others in our immediate vicinity, rather than considering other people as properties or Stoic extensions of ourselves. Philosophy says that we ought to acknowledge and honor the independence and each person's independence through action. By doing so, we may create a more wholesome and harmonious partnerships built on mutual courtesy and comprehension as opposed to ownership and authority. Acknowledging this reality does not suggest apathy or not inattention, but rather a more responsible and practical approach to human. By adopting this perspective, is possible for us to escape many of the disappointments and frustrations brought about by exaggerated expectations and discovering how respect individuals and connections for what they are as they are, not as we might like them to be. One of the Epicus. Those who advocate Stoic philosophy suggest a thoughtful consideration of human nature control over the facets of existence, that he queries the notion that we are in charge of components like the characteristics of our bodies, material belongings, such as clothing and homes, and even our dear ones, as per all of these components are subject to epicus. Towards the fluctuations and changes of the UN universe existing outside of the real beyond human authority, unless one has divine abilities about passionate love, is frequently shown as imagined as an intensely personal encounter filled with strong feelings and turbulent times. In contemporary civilization often exalts this emotional state, seeing it as one of the peaks of humanity. However, experience with the Stoics of passions of antiquity were perceived in a more troublesome light, primarily because of their might cloud judgment and result in careless or illogical choices. The Stoic method offers an intriguing opposition to the current perspective on connections and feelings, that it presents difficulties with us to reevaluate our connection with the outside world, indicating that rather than excessively devoting ourselves and attempting to exert authority on elements outside of our area of expertise, that we should concentrate on the things we can control. Personal responses, feelings, and assessments. This doesn't mean complete disengagement or absence of affection and concern for the people and, conversely, items we cherish. A Stoic viewpoint invites us to recognize and tackle our partnerships in a more harmonious and logically acknowledging and embracing ambiguity and transience as innate characteristics of the human condition. This Stoic perspective directs us to develop a type of emotional fortitude in which predominance of serenity and clarity of judgment over the capricious whims of feelings. By taking this position, we can savor something more fulfilling and healthful, partnerships that completely value them. However, without the pain and suffering that frequently accompany excessive connection, and the need for power over the four unpredictable categories of the Stoics' identified passions are investigated: pleasure, hunger, misery, and dread. Some emotions are inherently connected to connection, particularly when it deep love that arises while we sense the presence of a close buddy. Gratification in their absence. We sense an hunger for each other's company. Anxiety. We always lose someone we love, and anxiety develops when they depart. According to Stoic philosophy, either us or dies. Irrational thoughts come before passions. Assessments of the current circumstances. Nothing intrinsically good or negative in the existence or absence of a person in grief or death. These are neutral at most circumstances of life when we assess these things. Irrationally, events that we cause, whether positive or negative emotions, since our perspectives are not in sync. The Stoics then aim to rationally reduce feelings of passion by using rationale. Epicus suggests beginning small, items such as a cup or pot, and progressively moving on to goods of higher emotional significance, as those of family members. This detachment procedure seeks to cleanse verdicts that keep us from being unduly devoted to objects that are not ours, and this may lead to agony upon discovering that Romeo and Juliet portrays the struggle in striking detail. Between logic and emotion in this traditional Romeo and Juliet encounter a powerful emotional conundrum in which the ardor of forbidden love meets the reasonable facts about their competitor families. Juliet attempts several times to take a logical look at the circumstances, being aware of the intricate repercussions. Romeo, however, is the object of her adoration. Frequently motivated by passion, yet finding it difficult to reconcile his strong emotions with reason. And common sense in this story draws attention to the difficulty of balancing strong feelings balanced by reason and stoicism. Philosophy upholds the priority of. In real life, many choose reason over passion. People have trouble adhering to this route, particularly in romance connections and strong attachments. Stoicism provides an outlook on recognizing and handling these feelings, but putting them into action necessitates a major dedication to self-control and self-awareness. Romeo and Juliet, a tragedy by Shakespeare, acts as a timeless illustration of the struggle that exists in humans between feeling and rationale. For this story's vividness shows how strong feelings may impair judgment and cause impatience behaviors, as well as in Romeo and Juliet's story, likewise had a tragic conclusion. Emphasizes the necessity of finding a balance, a learning that lies between emotion and reasoning. Strikes a deep chord with people who want to balance, they're logical and emotional. Living with a Stoic perspective, the query of whether it's feasible to give up having strong emotional ties to other individuals and bear the loss of cherished ones, is addressed with a positive response, but additionally cautiously. Seneca, one of the renowned Stoic figures, addressed this cover a lot of ground in his letters, stressing the significance of mindset, self-control, and consistent practice to attain this level of detachment. But this implies nothing about a Stoic's need to maintain your composure in the face of loss, preserving parity following the passing of. Indeed, having someone close by is a terrific struggle, and Stoic thinking understands how difficult this work is. Stoic ancient figures such as Epicus, Cyprius, and Serbia, despite their desire for liberation from desires, knew the truth about the challenges that come with this procedure. It is noteworthy that Stoics introduced the idea of automatic proto-feelings and uncontrollable emotional responses, such as the shock when faced with peril or weeping after getting depressing. Stoicism in the news does not suggest the suppression of these primordial feelings, as they are seen as normal reactions and outside of our direct control. What Stoic philosophy aims to free itself from the emotions that may result from unreasonable ideas after these proto-feelings. Thus, Stoicism is not didactic, lack of empathy or disregard for feelings, but rather a sensible strategy whereby we acknowledge and embrace our first feelings while attempting to stop them from guiding us to illogical decisions and behaviors. This perspective offers a foundation for addressing the mental difficulties of living with calmness and sound judgment. Keeping the heart and mind in balance is one of the letters from Seneca, provide an intriguing viewpoint on how to handle the discomfort of losing 41 advertisements after being charged with the Empress Marielina's adultery, a questionable charge for certain historians. Initially, Seneca received a death sentence. However, by the Senate, Emperor Claudius placed the prisoner into a state of exile, subsequently traveled to Corsica, an island where, during his 8 years of exile, he sent a letter to Helia, his mother. Providing comfort as she dealt with her son's absence, Seneca counseled her against engage in unending sorrow, he said. Something the forefathers created a widows have, a 10-month time of mourning, therefore reducing their discomfort, he said. Although it is unwise to engage in never-ending sorrow at a loved one's passing, additionally, it is inconsiderate to communicate any suffering. It's best to locate a harmony, enabling oneself to experience the agony but also limiting it. So it seems like Seneca promoted a compromise. Path to experience mild, and this method of dealing with sadness is far from the ideal outlined by Epicus, who claims to be a passionate person unfazed by the death of loved ones. But the majority of people, including the mother of Seneca, is not a Stoic sage and will inherently feel depressed. Seneca provides a more practical means of addressing with loss, not the complete removal of desires, but there he advised his mother to use moderation, accept accountability for her own mental health, and participation in the studying philosophy and allocating. She will see to it that your wounds are healed. And ease your grief, he wrote. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Thank you. Observing.